What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is Wednesday. Actually, it's Thursday morning. I lose track of days during the winter, man, in Ohio. It's kind of crazy. Thursday morning, so I wanted to make a video summarizing some news overnight in regards to the Carolina Royal Ravens, but it's Thursday, so you know what that means. We're going to make our predictions for the upcoming week of matches. A big week for mostly teams at the bottom of the league. It's going to be kind of make and break to see if any one of them can sneak in a winner's bracket, but for many of them, it's going to mean being on one or two losses in losers, having to wait till Friday to play and probably getting top 12. So let's talk about the Carolina news and then we'll get right into predictions. So we got this rotation tweet overnight at 1 a.m. Sources: FeLo will replace GODRX on the Carolina Royal Ravens roster. Not really all that surprising of a change with a couple. I actually maybe think one match. I'll have to check Carolina's record. They're 1-4 right now, so they actually have two matches this weekend. Not surprising considering that GODRX has been unfortunately one of the worst physical players in the league, and Carolina is in a situation if they can find their way to winning both of these games, which I don't really think is going to happen. They could make winner's bracket, or maybe actually don't think 2 and 5 will get them in due to tiebreaker. But either way, they're trying to get some extra CDL points because it's going to be a scrap to see if they can qualify for champs at this point with how good their roster is playing. And by good, I mean not very good, because they've won 3 maps and they've all been in one series. And I think the reason they probably went with FeLo is more of a comfort thing. Clay and FeLo are friends. FeLo has been decent in kind of spot up substitute or temporarily roster placement situations before. Almost every year of the CDL I can remember. And I would guess that players on some of the better Challengers team, although I think FeLo's Challengers team is pretty good, I think some of the players would say like FC Black, for example, may not want to come into the Carolina situation until the offseason or potentially after Major 1 because there's not a lot of confidence that the team can really turn it around, / there's not a lot of job security. So I think FeLo coming in, probably signing a 14-day. I haven't confirmed that part, but we will see what's going on here. And I don't think this will be the end of moves for Carolina. Potentially they can make one more change before the major. And then after the major, I expect some additional changes potentially as well, as they try to get their team into a form where they're actually competitive and not getting slammed in almost every series they play. And interestingly enough, with FeLo heading on to the CDL, his Challengers team has made a change. I just want to cover this briefly. Temp has left his Challengers team, and they've been okay, but have been a little bit shaky as of late. If you watch them scrim, I think they were ahead early, but have kind of come back to the pack. And now he is replacing FeLo. It's going to be him, Yuli, Turiel, and Dave Patty, which could actually be a pretty decent squad. This team has been up there a little bit. I would say this team has actually been better than Don's old team the last couple of weeks in Challengers, so I'm curious to see how he can kick it on. This is obviously going to have knockdown effects for the Challengers scene, and they have a cup coming up this weekend, so there might be more shovels we'll cover on a video tomorrow if some fun stuff happens, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We got some interesting matches here coming up, a couple of top 4 matchups, and some really good matches to determine who are the 5th, 6th best teams are in the league. So let's dive in, starting with the matches on Friday. First up, we've got LAG versus the Minnesota Rocker. Both teams coming off of decent weeks, although I will say for the Minnesota situation, they beat a Carolina team playing with a substitute. So I don't really know how good Minnesota is. Right now, the fans have this pretty split, but for me, I actually feel pretty strongly that LAG is going to win this one, as long as they come out and play the way they played last week. I have Rocker maybe taking a map, but I can honestly see this being a 3-0 if Rocker played the way they played normally. So if they show up and play this series, if Reese plays well, if Big Wig plays well, this can get very interesting. But the Rocker we've seen recently, I don't know. I think they might lose to LAG. All right, next up, we have OPTIC Texas coming off a reverse sweep of the Vegas Legion, a little bit of a warning sign for their team. And you've got the Miami Heretics, who went 0-2 last week against Seattle and Boston. So big match, I think, especially for Miami, because you do not want to be 0-3 going into, you see this matchup against LAG. We'll talk about it in a second. I just think OPTIC's going to be the better team than them. I could see Miami taking a map, maybe a first map, a terminal hardpoint. I think OPTIC would be wise not to use this as a map pool expanding series, to really focus on the maps that they're good on, because if they try to square up on some of these maps that Miami is really solid on, I think they could take a couple off of OPTIC, especially on terminal. So I'm curious to see the vetoes. I think OPTIC get this done pretty clean at 3-1. And now we come to the best matchup, I think, on Friday. Toronto versus New York. You see the predictions. Most of the bettors are on New York over Toronto. I mean, predictions, not bettors. New York obviously beat Toronto last time they played at Champs, and it was not a close series. So I do think that Toronto is going to be a little bit motivated in this one. I think Toronto, for me, has been the better respawn team, but New York has been the better search team. We had Scrap on the flank last night. I asked him about S&D, and it didn't, the answer he gave is like, he wasn't a fan of the methodical play. He's just challenged. I don't know if he was just like shooting the breeze with me or Toronto's still kind of feeling things out in search. So I'm a little worried about that. That being said, I actually think that Toronto's respawn is good enough that I think they're going to take maps 1, 3, and 4 in the series, and New York will take map 2. But if this goes to a game 5, I got New York. That's kind of how I feel about this one. So if it ends before 5, I got Toronto. If it goes to a 5th map, I think New York take it. All right, let's move on to the Vegas Legion versus Toronto Ultra. Not going to waste too much time on this one. Even if Toronto, especially if Toronto loses to New York, I think this could be a quick series. Nothing I've seen from Vegas last week makes me think that they're going to be competitive against these top 4 teams. Even when they went up 2-0 against OPTIC, I didn't feel like they were going to close that out at all. And I do think they're going to get stomped pretty quickly by Toronto on Saturday, early afternoon. I guess mid-afternoon East Coast time, early afternoon Pacific, whatever. Now, here I actually think that this is the best matchup on Saturday. Miami versus LAG. This is potentially the battle of 2 of like the top 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th teams. I don't really know where these teams kind of stand, but I think these are teams that should be better than the rest. And this is a bit of an interesting matchup map pool wise because LAG is just going to remove Terminal, which is Miami's best map. They haven't played Terminal at all as a team in any game mode during the split. So I think you're going to see potentially a lot of Invasion of Karachi, which I actually do think benefits Miami. So for me, I'm actually going to take Miami in an upset here, game 5, because I do think the LAG's S&D is a little bit weak. I think I have more confidence in Miami to execute in that game mode. I think it's a banger. I think Miami will get it done and will end their slide and get a little bit of momentum going into the major. Next up, we have the Seattle Surge versus the Minnesota Rocker. Seattle only has 1 game this week, coming off a really disappointing week last week. They got slammed by Toronto and then rebounded against Miami. But I just think this Seattle team, to me, when you kind of watch them play, I think, yes, they are a pretty nasty search team, but I think the respawn, especially the hard point, I'm not confident, but they are playing a Minnesota Rocker team that I don't think is very good. And I do think Seattle will get this done. I am going to say 3-1. But I won't be surprised this is a 3-0. Then finally, Carolina versus FaZe. Now we talked about FeLo going to play with this one as a substitute. I just don't see Carolina taking a map off of FaZe. FaZe are in cruise control right now, and they generally don't lose to teams that have a substitute like that. And you can see the fan predictions are pretty clear in FaZe's favor. I think Carolina did beat them. The last time that Carolina has beat them, I think the only time the Royal Ravens franchise has beat them was like 2 summers ago. So just don't see that changing right now. That being said, this next series on Sunday for Carolina is an opportunity. LA Thieves versus the Carolina Royal Ravens. I don't think that Thieves have been playing all that good, and they are very weak in hardpoint. The thing is so is Carolina, and I think this is going to be a banger, and I think Thieves will get it done in S&D. I really don't like either of these teams in search, to be honest. I think Carolina is worse at search than Thieves is, and without practice with FeLo and the strats you want to execute, they're going to be winging it, and I think Thieves will probably get this done, but it'll be a little bit of a sketchy series. And we got 2, I would say, rivalry games coming up. New York and Boston. I think since Boston has come in the league, this matchup's had a lot of beef behind it. There's some org beef. There's player beef. There's a lot going on here. And this is one of those series that I'm very curious. So let's say New York, right, plays really good on Friday. I think this is a sweep. If New York comes out and they're what I expect, their respawn's a little bit iffy, but their search is good. It's a real opportunity for Boston because we've seen when Boston gets going and respawn, it can be solid, but they've been like very inconsistent for me. And I really can't trust inconsistent teams. So I'm going to take New York. The question is, do I give Boston 1 map or 2 maps, or do I give them 0? You know what? Since I have New York losing to Toronto, I think they're going to make light work of Boston. 3-0. We're going to go ahead and lock that in. In the last match, and I think the one that a lot of people are looking forward to is the OPTIC Texas versus FaZe match. But I will say for this one, it's a bit of a funky one because both teams are going to be on like 5, 6 wins. They're both basically going to be a top 4 seed. I don't think you want to go in this matchup and start whipping out like spots and S&D strats you want to save for the major. And OPTIC, if we take a look at recent history, has kind of owned this matchup against FaZe. The FaZe has been more consistent, but as you can see, the fan predictions are pretty split. I am going to take OPTIC 3-1 over FaZe. I think FaZe right now is playing better than OPTIC, but OPTIC's had their number in these matchups, and therefore I am going to go with that. But any result in this one's really not going to surprise me because, again, I don't think both teams want to win, obviously, but it wouldn't be wise or prudent to really break out your A+, S+ material for this one. You want to save it because the teams might play each other at Boston for a lot more than 10 CDL points online. So yeah, these are my predictions. I think there's a couple of snoozes in here, but I really like this Friday match, Toronto against New York. LAG Miami is could potentially be a massive banger on Saturday, maybe Minnesota, Seattle as well. And then on Sunday, I think the last two matches are good. So I actually think that this week is a lot better than last week. Last week was a pretty big snooze. I think these matchups are better, and I think we're going to be an interesting spot come Sunday night when we see the bracket, as the top 4 teams will be in the top 4 seeds, and we'll see who makes it to winners. If any one of these teams that are currently sitting on 1 win, like a Vegas or Carolina, can try and maybe sneak in, get that 8 seed, or is it going to be Boston who's currently holding that spot right now? All right, that'll do it for this video. Interesting week of matches coming up. Let me know in the comments what you think of my predictions. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. And as always, guys, we will see you on the next one.